Jeremy Hunt used Wednesday's budget to announce an expansion of free childcare to cover 1- and 2-year-olds in England. Parents of children aged 1 and 2 will be able to access 30 hours a week of free care under a policy estimated to cost £4 billion. The Chancellor is also set to increase funding for the existing programme of free childcare for 3-year-olds. So it begs the question, should parents be raising their own children? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome nanny and TV personality Laura Amies and Andrea Williams, CEO of Christian Concern. Great to have you both on the show. Laura, let me start with you. Shouldn't parents be raising their own kids, especially 1-year-olds?
Listen, even as a professional childcare provider, I have to say there is no better person to raise a child than their own parent. However, we are, and nurseries and childminders, all childcare providers are a fabulous backup option.
A backup, but it won't be a backup, will it? It will be the go-to option with 30 hours of free childcare, Laura. Listen, I've got no doubt you and your colleagues do an amazing job, and those kids are lucky to have you in their lives. But do you have concern for our society if very small children are being looked after by people that aren't their parents?
I have lots of concerns, to be honest, for our future society when it comes to the way that children are raised. If the children are receiving good quality care, then no, I don't. I think in any environment, even if it is a parent, forgive me to say, who's caring for a child, there are ways and there are approaches that aren't necessarily as effective as others. So in some instances, being within a professional setting could actually be very helpful for a child.
OK. Andrea, great to have you back on the show. Andrea Williams, CEO of Christian Concern. Your reaction to what is effectively the normalisation of childcare for the under-2s?
Well, it's great to hear Laura there. She has been very positive about, indeed, the role of parents. And of course, no doubt, and it's absolutely clear that what she promotes is really excellent childcare. But there can be no doubt that the real value to a child is being loved and nurtured by their mum, by their dad at home in those early years, and that to create a culture whereby that is continually outsourced to others as the go-to, as the norm, cannot really be beneficial for society, certainly but not beneficial for those little children. I'm a mum of 4, they're now well grown, but it was wonderful to have the opportunity to stay at home and to be with them. I mean, I also had some wonderful nursery care, it has to be said, absolutely wonderful nursery care. But Laura has made this point, hasn't she, that good quality care is great, but there's also quite a lot out there that isn't necessarily as great as it might be. And creating this overwhelming need and incentivising it rather than encouraging mums to consider how to stay at home and to stay at home wherever possible is actually a very sad move by the government.
Well, Andrea, this policy will cost the government anywhere from £300 to £400 a week per child. Many families, Andrea, would argue, look, give us the money, and it means that either mum or dad can stay at home and raise the baby.
Well, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it, to actually think differently about where the money is going. At the moment, parents are compelled almost to consider going back to work, the mum to consider particularly going back to work, because the tax rate on wages is so very high. So what they actually see as net income is small compared to what they might be earning. Well, let's think about that differently. Let's actually put more money into the family. Let's reduce the tax burden so that the mum might be able to stay at home. Of course, sometimes the dad, but it's more usually the mum might be able to stay at home. It would be amazing to see the tax breaks coming to the family. And there are countries, France, for instance, that gives real tax breaks to the families to incentivise parents to stay at home. In Hungary, we've seen similar schemes. Affordable housing, for instance, even affordable vehicles is something that Hungary encourages. And I think that that's the kind of way that we need to go. If we tax so hard from the wage packet, then we force two parents to have to go into the marketplace, when in fact we ought to be giving the tax breaks to those that are raising small children at the time, so that they can stay at home. I mean, because it is an absolutely wonderful privilege to be at home with little children and to raise them up. And when you're a mum, those moments, I remember when I was overwhelmed when my first child was born, but I was very much enjoying my life as a lawyer, and couldn't imagine even being at home with a mum. And then I met Lily, and that was it. And I really so loved that time being with her and raising her, and the three children that followed.
Well, lovely, lucky kids that they are. I wonder whether it is about the economy. This is about money, Laura, rather than the welfare of children and families. How about this quote from the journalist Alison Pearson, who tweeted this week, again and again, mothers tell pollsters what they'd like is to spend more time with their small children. This basic instinct is overridden by politicians who just see women as cash cows, not vital nurturers of the next generation.
Yeah, again, I think I'm going to have a whole heap of my colleagues kind of saying, Laura, you're doing us a disservice here. But I do agree. I do feel that there is no better person to care for their child, especially in the formative years, in those very early years, than their parent. And I am somebody that has taken a tiny baby from a parent's arms and cared for them with love. I'm very, I love my job. I'm very good at my job. I can say that. But if those little babies are being put into an environment that isn't, as loving or as nurturing, then yeah, it's going to be a little bit, I wouldn't say an issue for them, because we don't know. We don't know what will happen throughout their development. But where should they be? In their mother's or father's arms? Yeah,
I mean, Laura, listen, I'm going to get you out of trouble with your entire industry. Because I think that, you're both rightly concerned about these small children being looked after in nurseries. But, I mean, most nurseries do an amazing job. They are very caring. They are very loving.
Absolutely.
And let me tell you that when my eldest went to nursery, and it was just a few hours a week at first, but actually it transformed his personality. He became more independent, more outgoing, more sociable. He was stimulated. And actually, in many cases, the kids have a more stimulating time in nursery than they would at home, when mum or dad is actually on the laptop sending emails and nursing a coffee rather than really doing anything.
Yeah, that brings me back to the point I made earlier about it really depends on the environment, because you can be at home with your parent who adores you more than anybody on the planet, but it's not necessarily going to be a very stimulating or rewarding environment where they are learning all the skills that we then need to become, an effective member of society. It's so dependent on the circumstance. And there may even be instances where parents don't necessarily have to go out to work, but actually they require that break, because there's nothing more challenging than being with children all day, every day. So in some instances, it's not even necessarily about the money. I'm sorry to kind of go off on a tangent. It is about the fact that parents, they need help. They need the village. So
Laura,
there's so many different...
Laura,
sorry, go on.
I've got to run. I totally agree with you. Listen, I need a bit of childcare for my eldest tomorrow night. He's 17. Do you think you could do a couple of hours? He's an absolute nightmare.
I'm busy, sorry.
He's still teething. Thank you so much, Laura Amis, nanny and TV personality, yes, and Andrea Williams, CEO of Christian Concern.